the universe you know is just one of many, and every so often, a crack opens and reality from another world bleeds through? What if every doodle you made was actually a window into your future self? Since age 7, Alex has been idly sketching the same man's face, beard, top knot, shaven sides throughout school and college. For 3 decades, the image remained just a doodle, nothing like his own reflection. Then, a year ago, Alex rediscovered his old notebooks and froze. The face in those drawings was now his face, down to every whisker and hairstyle detail. He'd never changed his look to match the sketches, nor had he consciously remembered drawing them, yet here they were, trapped in time. Was Alex unknowingly crafting a portrait of his future self, or did the universe slip him a glimpse from a parallel life where this was already reality? What if your next-door neighbor never existed, except in your memories? In autumn 2012, Columbus nurse Danielle pulled into her driveway and saw a moving van parked next to her longtime neighbor's home. She waved and yelled hello, but no one answered. When she asked around, other neighbors were baffled. There had been no resident there for over 10 years, and county property records showed the lot vacant since 2001. Danielle even found official tax bills listing the address as unassigned, yet her smartphone photos captured the moving truck, the name on its side, and the familiar porch of the house she'd known since childhood. In a single night, the entire residence and the person she'd shared block parties with vanished from every public record. Picture stepping onto a train that, according to every schedule, shouldn't exist. In 1973, Boston commuter Mark Patterson regularly took the 7:45 p.m. line from South Station. One evening, bleary-eyed from working overtime, he boarded what he assumed was his usual train. 2 stops later, he glanced at the station sign and froze. It read Oldwick Junction, a station that shut down since the 1940s. Confused, Mark asked the conductor, who stared blankly and slapped his ticket. "All aboard for Oldwick," he said. When Mark disembarked at his apparent destination, the platform was bustling, but the schedule board listed no trains stopping there after dusk. Maintenance crews later confirmed the rails were decommissioned decades earlier. Mark's ride remains unexplained, leading him to wonder if he accidentally hopped into a parallel timeline's commuter system. Think you remember every Sinbad movie? Think again. Ask anyone born in the late 80s if they saw Shazam, the 1990s comedy where Sinbad plays a genie granting hilarious wishes, and 9 out of 10 people will swear it's real. I've seen this movie. They recall promotional tie-in toys, VHS covers with Sinbad's face, even commercials with that unforgettable theme song. Yet no studio records exist. No scripts, no posters in Viacom or 20th Century Archives. Sinbad himself has denied starring in any such film, and no footage has ever surfaced. This Mandela Effect anomaly suggests millions briefly flit into a universe where Sinbad's Genie movie actually existed, only to return claiming it never was. How did a single letter disappear from every bottle of Febreze overnight? For years, people swore they bought Febreze, an air freshener spelled Febreze. Then one day, retailers everywhere stocked Febreze, with just one E before the Z. Complaints flooded consumer forums. They changed the name without telling us. Yet corporate archives show it's always been Febreze with one E before the Z. Even longtime employees admit they remember the extra E. Was this a simple rebranding, or did millions of shoppers briefly slip into a parallel market where that second E never existed? What if a dream could order your real-world actions? College student Priya dreamed 3 nights in a row of her roommate Sarah handing her an envelope at 3:33 a.m., urging her to open it right away. The very next night at 3:33 a.m., Priya awoke to find a delivery slip tucked under her door. On impulse, she retrieved the package from the lobby. Inside was a sealed envelope labeled "Open at 3:33 tomorrow." Heart pounding, Priya obeyed and found a letter from Sarah warning Priya not to take a certain bus trip, citing a recent accident in the news. What was odd was that the next day, Priya had a trip planned on this exact bus, and in a dark twist of fate, that day and that exact ride Priya had booked did crash minutes after leaving. Priya swears she dream-walked into information from a timeline where she'd heeded Sarah's warning days earlier. Have you ever looked at a building and seen something that couldn't belong there? Photographer Theo was snapping long exposure shots of downtown Chicago's skyline. He took 2 identical frames 10 seconds apart. Reviewing them later, he noticed in the first photo a gleaming glass tower that stood adjacent to the Sears Tower. In the second photo, same angle, same time, the tower was gone. When Theo rushed outside, the block looked unchanged. No extra skyscraper, no construction site. Neighbors had no memory of anything ever existing there. Records confirmed the plot was empty for decades. Theo insists his camera glimpsed a structure from another reality and that his lens just happened to catch its brief crossover. What if your doppelganger lives a life eerily parallel to yours, just miles away? In 2011, British IT consultant David Clark Googled his own name and found another David Clark living in Manchester with the same birthday, same middle name, and even the same job title at a rival tech firm. Intrigued, he reached out and discovered the other David had the same childhood nickname, had traveled to the same backpacking hostel in Thailand in 2005, and even shared a rare allergy to kiwi. Yet neither man had ever met or even knew of each other until that Google search. DNA testing confirmed that they weren't related. "It's looking like a mirror image of my life," David said. Was this an improbable coincidence, or did 2 parallel streams of Earth diverge, spawning twin lives in different locales? Have you ever walked into a library and checked out a book that shouldn't really exist? Librarian Maria Perez was reorganizing a decades-old archive when she stumbled on a title called The Eighth Sign of the Zodiac, published in 1978 by a local press. Curious, she tried to locate any record of the publisher or the author. Nothing. No ISBN, no reviews, no library listings anywhere else in the country. Even the author's name, Thomas Adler, turned up 0 hits. Maria flipped through the manuscript. It contained references to cultural phenomena that didn't exist until the 1990s, and when pressed, her library's old accession logs showed the book being cataloged in 1980, 2 years before anyone invented the ideas in its pages. Maria suspects the book slipped in from another timeline where those cultural milestones happened early. Could a single subway stop be the gateway to another world? New York City bus driver Ricardo Luna always ended his shift at the 23rd Street depot. One night he took a shortcut through the subway tunnel and noticed a dimly lit station sign that read 23rd Street, but the platform looked brand new, with shiny white tile and digital display boards. Ricardo walked through expecting to find the main concourse, but emerged instead onto an entirely unfamiliar street corner. Phone maps showed him near 57th Street. Panicked, he retraced his steps only to arrive back at the usual, worn-out 23rd Street exit. The renovated station had vanished. Ricardo insists he stepped into a parallel version of the subway, if only for a minute.
Just what in the hell is going on up in the sky in this first video? So here we see a group of folks hanging outside watching the sky, cause something just doesn't seem right. The sky is bright blue. The thing is, it's not daytime, and everyone's pretty shook up about it. Especially when the sky suddenly turns dark again, as we can see here. Now, clearly there is a storm. I mean, you see some subtle lightning flashes in the distance, there's dark clouds up above, but this was one serious flash of lightning, if that's even what it was. I mean, it really does look like there was a glitch in the sky, and then suddenly it became daytime for a few moments and then went back to normal. And here are some images of the sky that night. That looks pretty insane. If I saw that, I would definitely think the apocalypse was on its way. Funniest comment on this one, by the way, could be one of those high-powered flashlights. Yes. High-powered flashlights, known to do that to the sky. Can you make any sense of this next clip? Weird. Snow filling up the reflection in the mirror, but panning to the window, to outside, there looks to be no snow falling. I really wish snow worked this way here. I mean, it looks lovely when you don't actually have to go outside and shovel it, walk through it, drive through it, shiver through it, clean up all the snow residue you inevitably drag into your house. If we really are living in a simulation, I would just prefer this type of glitch to happen more often, is all I'm saying. Is that too much to ask for? The bird in this next video comes from Blue French Horn 26, who said that her daughter's boyfriend was on his way to lifeguard training when he spotted this. Just what is wrong with birds lately? This is not the first bird stuck in midair video that I've seen online, and what's interesting about this clip is the dude behind the camera is not the only one who notices that something is off. One guy had gotten out of his car to take a picture. So it's interesting that people at different angles saw the bird and noticed how weird it was. I say this because some commenters said the bird may have been suspended by fishing line or something, which is possible, but you certainly can't see any sign of that in the video. What do you all think of this one though? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. We usually talk about planes disappearing on this channel, but this is something else entirely. A plane that seems to just be sitting up in the sky. This one comes from TikToker Tanya.Draws, who was driving down a road in Chicago when she spotted the plane, and according to her, it was not the first time. What's crazy about this one is how low the plane is. I've seen other videos where people bug out about a plane seemingly frozen in the sky, but the plane is usually way higher up in the air. Easy for optical illusions to happen in that case, and while this could be an optical illusion too, it is just interesting to me how close this plane is. I mean, we get a nice, clear view here. Anyway, regardless of the explanation, it just looks super weird. This next video got a lot of people talking about a year back. So a man named Eddie from Fresno, California, going by Break and Pop on TikTok, posted a video showing the reflection of this orange Corvette C8 in the window of a strip mall. The thing is, no one can find the actual car in the parking lot. Eddie pans the camera across the lot multiple times, repeatedly asking, "Where is this car? I seriously don't see the car anywhere." This one went viral. Hundreds of commenters trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Eddie even included the text "glitch in the matrix" and asked in the caption if anyone could explain what was going on. Some said it was proof that we're living in a simulated world. Some eagle-eyed commenters also pointed out some other strange details about the video, like two mannequins on a bench and this weird bird bath sign that led one user to joke, "Do birds even read?" Seemed like there was just a lot of odd stuff about this parking lot. So this next one is pretty creepy. A TikToker named Laughter Awaits posted this clip of a woman seemingly frozen in place, and the pair behind the camera are understandably totally dumbfounded by what they're seeing. Not only is this woman standing perfectly still, but her legs are crossed. How do you stand in this? I know you can't see me, but just imagine I'm crossing your legs, if you will. This video also goes on for over a minute, and she would have been standing like that before they started recording. Whoever this person is, she would be amazing at red light, green light, but all of a sudden, she just unfreezes and continues to walk like nothing happened. Very strange. Imagine seeing that at night though. You just look outside your bedroom window and she's there, just mid-stride, frozen in place. Those blinds would be getting closed. This next video comes from Lynn's No Hands, who wrote in the caption, "Why are all the same cars parked in this empty townhome neighborhood?" Very good question, Lynn's. Let's take a look. So, yep, as the caption says, it's all the same car, different colors, sure, but same type. And they're all backed into the driveways. None are facing the other way. Pretty weird stuff. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm driving past neighborhoods like this, I do get a weird feeling anyway. It's just, a series of boring houses, all identical, just repeating over and over and over again. This, of course, takes it to a whole other level though. I don't know, did someone just buy this entire neighborhood and then turn it into a car dealership? Your guess is as good as mine. So back in 2023, a TikTok video posted by user unknown1575489, very catchy title, started making the rounds online. This video shows a person walking down a busy sidewalk, or rather, not walking. As we can all clearly see, this woman appears to be frozen mid-stride. It's not a still image. There are cars driving by. This person seems to be just stuck in place. Then moments later, the person just snaps back to reality and starts walking again. This video racked up more than 5.5 million views, with thousands of comments diving into theories. Most of them, of course, pointed straight to simulation theory, with users joking that this person was like an NPC in a video game. And yeah, I can't say I don't get some cyberpunk glitch vibes from this video. What's odd is that her hair doesn't even appear to move at all. It's one thing for someone to just stand as still as they can, but that bit is just extra odd. The hair not moving. And according to the uploader, she'd been standing like that for about a minute before he even started recording. So did this fish just learn to swim in midair? This video comes from TikToker Ruben.v.irs, and yeah, I do not know what the hell is happening here. So we watch as the water drains from the tank, but this fish doesn't go down with the water. It just stays at the exact level it was before, swimming around in the tank, just not with water around its body. Some of these things are really hard to describe in words, and here it is from another angle. And here, you'll notice that there are other fish in the tank, and they float down with the water as it drops further and further down the tank, because, you know, that's just how gravity works. But this one fish zips from the bottom of the tank to the top, where there's nothing but empty space. Pretty cool video. Just what in the fork is this? Posted by Nico Too Swift. He and his siblings watch as this fork does what no fork has done before. I sat down for a while trying to form the words to describe what I'm looking at, but I just gave up. I mean, you can see what's happening. Now, not only is this very weird, but reading the text, this was all filmed at his brother's place, which, according to him, was haunted. So apparently this was not the only strange thing they'd experienced at this house. Alright, this one's a bit of a strange rabbit hole. It revolves around a movie that doesn't actually exist, but has a bizarre legend attached to it. So there's this film that supposedly starred the actor Sinbad. If you're like me, you know him from the Arnold Schwarzenegger classic Jingle All the Way. But some also remember Sinbad having been in this movie called Shazam in the 90s, where he played a genie. The premise is that he granted wishes and caused chaos in typical 90s kids movie fashion. A lot of people swear they saw this movie, renting it or watching reruns of it on TV. The only problem is no one can find it now. For years, people have tried to track down any trace of this Shazam movie, but it doesn't seem to exist anywhere in any record. Sinbad himself has even come out and said, like, yeah, I never made that movie. And yet, a surprising number of people are adamant that they remember it. It's become one of the more popular Mandela effects, where a large number of people remember something one way, which turns out to be different, or in this case, not even existing at all. So what's going on here? Well, one theory is that people are confusing it with another movie called Shazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal as the genie, which was released in 1996. And yeah, I can see people getting confused about the name, but I mean, are all of these people really confusing Sinbad with Shaq? That doesn't really add up. I mean, it's possible, but what if there's a parallel universe where things are just slightly different, and in that universe, there really is a movie called Shazam starring Sinbad, and this very second, there's another version of me filming a video being like, damn, I could have sworn there was a movie called Shazam back in the 90s starring Shaq, but nobody can find it. Next up is Burmeasia, a whole island that completely vanished. This one's wild because it really was a real place, a tiny island in the Gulf of Mexico near the Yucatan Peninsula. You could find it on old maps, and even the Mexican government used to claim that it existed. In fact, it was officially documented as part of Mexico's territory, right in the area where they had a territorial dispute with the US over oil rights. Well, in 1997, a Mexican Navy survey came out saying the island was no longer there. They couldn't find it with any of their modern equipment, even though it was supposed to be there, of course. Having been marked on maps for hundreds of years, the island seemed to have just disappeared though. Well, your first thought is that it probably just sank into the ocean, but that's highly unlikely because the area was relatively shallow and there's actually no sign of the island ever having existed. in the first place. So what are some other possibilities? Well, some people think it was deliberately erased from maps as part of some secret government deal. Others say cartographers had been wrong the entire time, and that the island was either never there or is a misidentified rock or sandbar that got labeled as an island. But there's a more fringe idea too, one that ties into the title of this video, of course. The idea that Burmeasia never existed in the first place, and what we're actually dealing with is a glitch or shift between parallel universes. Some say it's like the island slipped through the cracks of time and was never meant to be in our reality at all. Now let's talk about Flight 19, one of the most famous disappearances in aviation history, and of course, it's tied to the Bermuda Triangle. This incident goes back to December 5th of 1945. Flight 19 was a training mission for 5 US Navy bombers flying out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Everything was going well until something went horribly wrong. The pilots lost their bearings and they got disoriented. According to reports, they were never able to get a proper fix on their location, and things quickly went from bad to worse. One of the pilots even reported that the compass wasn't working right, but the entire squadron of 5 planes just vanished, like they were swallowed up by the ocean. No wreckage was ever found, and the Navy couldn't figure out exactly what happened. And on top of that, a rescue plane was sent out to search for them. That plane also went missing. No trace of it was ever found either. The story just adds more mystery when you consider how much equipment was searching and still nothing showed up. People started speculating, of course. Some think it was probably a simple navigation error or mechanical failure, nothing too crazy, but others believe that the Bermuda Triangle was involved, that maybe this mysterious region of the ocean is some sort of portal or electromagnetic anomaly that messes with navigation systems, sucking planes and ships into some other dimension or an alternate reality. Others go even further, saying that UFOs or time warps are to blame, but at the end of the day, no one knows what really happened to Flight 19, which is exactly why it's still talked about to this day. The USS Cyclops was this massive American naval vessel that disappeared without a trace in 1918. It was carrying over 300 crew members and a hefty load of manganese ore from the Caribbean to Baltimore, and it vanished somewhere again in the Bermuda Triangle. It's one of the most baffling disappearances in naval history, and what makes it so mysterious is that this wasn't just a random ship lost at sea. It was a huge ship with a solid reputation. It was part of the US Navy during World War II. The Cyclops had been a workhorse for the Navy for years, but when it set out from Barbados in March of 1918, something obviously went wrong. It didn't check in when it was supposed to, and no one heard from it again. The ship was huge, 541 feet long, and it was designed to withstand the rough seas, so it's hard to believe it could just sink without a trace. No wreckage was ever found. Some think a freak storm or a mechanical failure could have caused it to sink. Others believe the ship was sabotaged, maybe by enemies during the war, but because the thing disappeared somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle, some people of course think something stranger may have happened. In 1587, a group of English settlers landed on Rowan Oak Island, which is off the coast of modern-day North Carolina. They were sent to establish a permanent colony, but when a supply ship returned in 1590, they were gone, completely vanished. The settlement was empty, not a single person was left behind. There wasn't even any sign of a struggle. It was as if the whole colony had never even been there in the first place. But they had been. There was a clue that remained. The only sign of them was Croatoan carved into a tree, the word. Now, the thing is, Croatoan was the name of a nearby island and also the name of a Native American tribe in the area. So some believe the settlers may have tried to integrate with the tribe, but why would they leave behind such a cryptic message? Could they have been forced to leave by some hostile force, or did they just abandon the colony altogether? Maybe they just moved further inland, but then why did they leave no trace of where they went? Of course, there's also the theory that something much stranger happened. Some people wonder the settlers didn't vanish into the woods or the sea at all, but rather slipped into some other dimension, like a glitch in the fabric of time or space. Could Rowan Oak have been one of those spots in history where a tear in reality caused an entire settlement to disappear? Now, I will admit that this one may be a bit of a stretch, but I do think it's kind of fascinating, so I feel like it's worth adding here. You might not even know this, but at one point in US history there were $1,000 bills. The US Treasury printed $1,000 notes. These bills were mainly used for huge bank transfers and business deals, not something people would really carry around in their wallet. They were officially discontinued in 1969, along with other high-value bills like $500 and even $5,000 notes. But a lot of these old bills have just disappeared. The US Treasury estimates that millions of dollars worth of these $1,000 bills are still out there somewhere, but where? I mean, are they all hidden away in private collections? Maybe, but there are some conspiracy theories here too. Some believe that certain bills were deliberately destroyed or hidden by the government to keep the true extent of the nation's wealth under wraps. Others think that the bills might still be circulating under the radar in the hands of shadowy people in underground deals. Next is a very strange phenomenon called the Taos hum, a low-frequency sound that can only be heard by a small percentage of people. But for those who do hear it, it's maddening. This hum is mostly heard around Taos, New Mexico, but there have been reports from all over the world of similar sounds in other locations like parts of England, Canada, and Japan. The hum is described as this low rumbling sound, like a distant diesel engine running constantly. But when investigators try to find the source, well, they can't. It's not coming from machinery or anything else that can be easily identified. People who hear it often report feeling headaches and insomnia though. Scientists have thrown out theories like tinnitus, which is an ear condition that can cause ringing in the ears, but this isn't really a ringing sound. Some wonder if the hum could be related to electromagnetic fields in the area or seismic activity in the Earth's crust, but some people believe the Taos hum may be stranger, caused by interdimensional energy shifting through our world because of some tear in the fabric of reality, a hint of a parallel universe bleeding through. In 1966, two Brazilian men, Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, were found dead on a hilltop wearing lead masks, the kind used to shield from radiation. A cop found their bodies after they'd gone missing. The men were lying side by side, there were no signs of a struggle, and there was a small bottle of water next to them. But the masks, nobody could figure out what those were about. They were also carrying a note that looked like instructions for some sort of ritual, mentioning radiation and how to use the masks. The whole thing made it seem like they were about to do some sort of experiment, but no one could figure out what. Were they part of some secret cult? Were they trying to contact aliens? Or were they mixed up in some government experiment? Nobody knows, and no one ever found out how they died. This has become a rather infamous story on Reddit. Always reminds me of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Inner Light. So this guy takes a hit to the head and blacks out. But instead of being out for a few seconds, the guy ends up living what feels like 10 full years in a completely different life. Entirely in his head, of course. In this other version of reality, he meets a woman, falls in love, settles down, starts a family. They go grocery shopping, they argue about bills, they play with their kids in the yard. He remembers what the weather was like, he remembers birthdays. I mean, we're talking real grounded stuff here. This doesn't sound like the type of wacky nonsense that goes on in dreams. Felt like real life. 10 years of it, mind you. But one day in that world, he starts noticing something strange. There's this lamp in the living room, totally normal looking, but it doesn't fit. It starts bugging him. It's like a little glitch. And the more he stares at it, the more everything else starts to feel wrong. And that's when it all starts unraveling. Suddenly he wakes up, he's lying on the ground, surrounded by people. He's back where he was right before he blacked out. Only minutes have passed. But the man is absolutely devastated. The life he just came back to doesn't feel right anymore. He remembers his wife and kids from the other world. He misses them. They weren't real though, but the emotions were. For a long time after, he struggled. He said it felt like he was mourning people who never existed. Now, was this a case of the brain doing weird things under stress? Or did he tap into something else, a different version of his life that's playing out somewhere, a parallel universe? Ken Korczak, a writer and journalist, had one of the most bizarre experiences, writing an article claiming that he'd slipped into a parallel universe. It wasn't like a whole new world, just a slightly different version of his own home and garden. He said the differences were subtle at first. His pets, specifically his cats and chickens, were behaving completely differently than he was used to. It's like they were the same animals, but something was just off about them, like seeing them through a different lens. In his words, it felt like everything in his yard was a few degrees askew. But the weirdest part came when he met this strange female entity. She wasn't human, at least not in the way you'd think. Korczak described her as resembling an elf or a fairy, and she seemed completely at home in this
alternate reality. He also described feeling like she was there for a reason, like she was some kind of guide in this parallel world. He spent a lot of time reflecting on it, especially the strange, almost magical feeling of meeting this being. He genuinely believes that he had a real encounter with a parallel version of his home. As someone who's always been interested in the concept of alternate realities too, he dove deep, trying to make sense of it. Was this just a hallucination, or did he actually slip into another dimension for a brief moment? In December of 2024, Google made a pretty big announcement about their new quantum chip, Willow. This chip solved a problem in 5 minutes that would have taken even the fastest supercomputers 47 years. What was amazing here though wasn't just how fast the chip was, it's also what the head of Google's quantum AI team, Hartmut Nevins, said about it. He mentioned that this speed might be a sign that their quantum computers are pulling from multiple realities at once. Not just a throwaway comment, he was serious about this. Now, this ties in with something called the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which states that every decision or event causes the universe to split into different versions, creating a parallel reality for each possibility. So when a quantum computer like Willow does a calculation, it's possible that it's tapping into these other universes, running all the possibilities at once, without us even realizing it. And it's not just Google talking along these lines. Other tech companies like IBM and D-Wave have been exploring quantum computing for years, and some think this technology could eventually lead us to understand or even interact with alternate realities. It's not quite science fiction anymore. Quantum computing might be the closest thing we've got to real-world proof that the multiverse could exist. So it's a sweltering day in July of 1954 at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. A man arrives on an international flight and walks up to customs. Everything seems routine. He looks European, speaks multiple languages, and has a legit-looking passport, from a distance that is. Looking at it up close, turns out this passport says he's from a country called Torid. Never heard of it? Neither had the Japanese officials. They ask him to point it out on a map, and without hesitation he points to the area around where Andorra is, between France and Spain, but he's confused. He insists Torid has been a country for over 1,000 years. The customs officers are confused, to say the least. Is this a joke? Is the guy just out of his mind? The guy seems just as confused as they are. His passport has stamps from other countries, including past visits to Japan, and he has multiple currencies in his wallet. He even mentions a business trip and says he's got meetings set up with a company in Tokyo, but when the officials call the company, they say they've never heard of him. Same story with the hotel that he claimed to have booked. At this point, they're really not sure what to do with him, so they put him up in a hotel room under guard for the night while they try to figure things out. But by the next morning, he's gone. The room was locked from the outside. There was no way out, at least none that the guards wouldn't have been able to see. To this day, no one knows who he was or where he came from, really. Some think he slipped into our world from another reality and then slipped right back out. Others think this whole story is just a good old-fashioned urban legend, but if we seriously consider the possibility that the multiverse really is a thing, well then this story starts to sound a little less outlandish. The Marawasi stone forest in Peru is one of those places that seems to have a ton of weird stuff happening. People have been talking about strange occurrences there for years, mostly because the place is filled with these huge stone structures that look like they belong to some ancient civilization. But there are also some strange stories surrounding this place. Well, one goes that a group of hikers got a lot more than they bargained for when they camped here. While hanging out, they started to hear some music coming from what seemed like a cabin in the middle of nowhere. It sounded like a celebration. The group looked around and sure enough, they spotted a stone cabin lit up from the inside, and they could see people dancing through the windows. The people were dressed like they were from the 1600s, all in old-fashioned clothes. Naturally, one of the hikers decided to check things out. She got closer to the cabin, and the closer she got, the stranger things became. Her friend noticed that she was acting off, like her body was stiff and she wasn't walking right. It got even weirder when she suddenly couldn't move her arm, like she was partially paralyzed. They managed to pull her away from the cabin, and she snapped out of it right away. People who know the area say the Marawasi might be some kind of doorway between dimensions or timelines. The idea is that certain spots on Earth might have thin barriers to other worlds, and that cabin could have been a glimpse into some some different time. This story comes from a Reddit user named Albert Norman 2069, who shared an experience that left him questioning everything about the world. It had all started on June 28, 2014, a day that seemed normal at first. He'd woken up, brushed his teeth, ate breakfast, and headed out to work. But as he turned on the car radio, something wasn't right. Instead of the usual music, the station was airing a talk show. The host was excitedly talking about something called Victory in the Great War, and praising the troops for their role in this victory. At first, the Redditor thought maybe it was some kind of special segment, but the more the host went on, the stranger things got. There was talk of a victory in Italy, and something about the Second Great Depression finally coming to an end. He was confused, but he ended up brushing things off. It was probably just fictional. But then things started getting even stranger when he was at work. During lunch, he overheard his coworkers talking about the same victory in Italy, and they kept mentioning the numbers 33 to 13. When he asked what they were talking about, they acted like he was the odd one for not knowing. And when he asked about a coworker named Sam, who didn't seem to be there, no one seemed to remember it. At least something was very off. On his way home, he decided to take a different route to avoid traffic, and that's when he noticed that the city looked worse than he remembered. Buildings were crumbling, some were abandoned, and there were banners everywhere again celebrating this mysterious victory. When he finally got home, he flicked on the news. The anchors were talking about the victory in Italy and how the US was dealing with a war abroad. Europe was also in chaos, and the US was in an even worse depression than the 1930s. Of course, things went back to normal by the next day. So was it just a really vivid dream? Well, possibly. But perhaps Albert Norman 2069 really did spend a day in a much darker version of our own reality. Next up are some pretty strange cave paintings, the Wanjinas, some of the most mysterious and downright eerie cave art on Earth. These ancient paintings are found in the Kimberley region of northwestern Australia, painted by Aboriginal tribes whose culture has been going strong for over 60,000 years. The Wanjinas, according to legend, were sky beings, spirits from the clouds who came down during dream time, said to be this time when the Earth was still being formed. These beings supposedly created the land, animals, people, everything. They taught the Aboriginals how to live, and then they vanished. Some say they returned to the stars, others say they went underground. But, I mean, just look at these cave paintings, the big black eyes, the pale skin, they look like aliens. But this art is estimated to be tens of thousands of years old, long before anyone was talking about aliens, at least not in the modern sense. Kinda makes you wonder, are the Wanjinas more than just myth? Did these ancient tribes actually encounter something from beyond the stars? Or maybe even from a parallel reality? This final story comes from Reddit user GoodResolve33 and goes as follows. When I was younger, my cousins and I would play in my aunt's basement during major holiday parties. Parents would be upstairs and we would all just hang out and mess around in the basement, entertaining ourselves with whatever junk was down there. Well, there was a metal door down there with a bolt lock that we never touched. But one day, we unlocked the door and we saw a major boxing event going on. I'm talking Jumbotron, bright lights, arena, and a major crowd. Everything seemed to freeze when we opened the door though. People in the crowd turned around to look at us. Fighters stopped fighting, the referee signaled us out, and we saw shadows in the crowd running toward us. It all sounds crazy, but I remember how scared we were. We shut the door, ran upstairs, and sat in the living room with our parents. I remember them being like, "What's going on with these guys?" As we sat in the living room silent, crapping ourselves because we thought we were going to get in trouble. Fast forward to much later, I tried to tell my parents, and they swear that I imagined it. I thought I did too for the longest time, until randomly, one of my cousins from that day hit me up after so long of not communicating, only to bring up that same event, detail for detail as I described and remembered it. I used to watch this video all the time growing up. It's one of my favorites. So in this classic piece of police dashcam footage, Officer Wayne Daniels is caught in a chase with this white car. The vehicle is weaving through traffic, making all these freaky, sporadic maneuvers, almost like the car itself is possessed. But aside from that, it's a pretty standard car chase until the vehicle makes a hard left and drives straight through a fence. Yes, through it. All Officer Wayne Daniels can do now is just watch as the vehicle he was pursuing fades into the distance beyond the intact fence right in front of him. spooky stuff. Next is another strange car video. This one comes out of Russia. So this vehicle goes to make a left-hand turn, and as it moves into the intersection, suddenly this random car just appears, cutting them off, nearly causing a collision. Now, on one hand, you have all the strange theories. Is it a ghost car? Did the vehicle just suddenly spawn out of a parallel reality? On the other hand, this driver could have just roared into the intersection so fast they weren't on camera until they just seemed to show up, and that is just reckless driving. And honestly, I think that freaks me out way more than some mysterious phantom car appearing out of nowhere. Well, if there's anything that looks like it materialized out of a parallel reality, it's this thing. This has become a pretty famous photograph in the UFO/UAP community. It's called the Calvin photo. It was actually hidden for decades. Some people say it's one of the clearest UFO images ever taken. The story goes that back in 1990, two hotel chefs were out on a casual hike in the Scottish Highlands near a place called Calvin. They were just out for some fresh air, nice view, and then boom, they spot this massive diamond-shaped object just hovering in the sky. That's when they managed to snap their picture. A real sharp picture as well. They send it to a newspaper, but instead of publishing it, the paper passes it straight to the Ministry of Defense, and then the photo just disappears for over 30 years. Well, in 2022, a journalist named David Clark finally drags it out of hiding. Turns out a former Royal Air Force press officer had a copy stashed away this whole time. Clark gets a photo expert to analyze it, and guess what? There's no signs of tampering to the image. It is legit. So, what is this thing? Well, Clark thinks it's a real UFO. Not necessarily alien maybe, but definitely something unidentified. What you're looking at here is footage of what's been referred to as the Hazdellan Lights in Norway. These things have been showing up since the 1930s, and no one's been able to fully explain what they are. It's these weird glowing orbs or flashes of light. They're seen floating or zooming around a valley. Sometimes they hover in one spot, other times they move around, fast or slow. They've been seen at night, in the daytime, and they've stuck around anywhere from a few minutes to several hours. Scientists have actually tried to study them too. There's been legit research, long-term observation. People have tried to explain it with stuff like ionizing gas clouds, rare atmospheric conditions, or reflections from aircraft lights, you know, all the standard science guesses, but none of them have ever definitively solve the mystery. Just what exactly is going on here? Well, it's called ball lightning. It's a rare, unexplained phenomenon, a glowing orb of electricity that floats around during a thunderstorm. Sometimes ball lightning will stick around for several seconds, even up to a minute. People have described it as anything from the size of a golf ball to a basketball, sometimes bright white, other times glowing blue or orange. It's weird, it's unpredictable, and it doesn't follow any of the normal rules. The craziest part is scientists still don't really know how it works. There are a bunch of theories floating around. Maybe it's plasma, maybe it's some kind of gas reacting with electrical charges, maybe it's something else entirely. No one's ever been able to make it happen in a lab. It just shows up randomly and then it's gone. That's probably why there are stories of ball lightning flying through closed windows or even damaging people's homes. It's like it just phases in from somewhere else and then disappears again like nothing ever happened. So yeah, could it be some rare natural thing we just don't get yet? Yeah, sure. Or maybe it's not just electricity at all. Maybe it's something slipping in from another dimension for a few seconds before vanishing back to wherever it came from. Did this TikToker briefly switch realities or experience a glitch in the Matrix? Jade Gonzalez, or as she goes by on TikTok, KDaddy777_2, she shared some security footage taken at the restaurant she works at. She'd been cutting lemons when something very strange happened. Take a look. So she slices through this lemon twice, once in half, and then she cuts through one of the halves. She goes to put the cut half in a bag, and then she's like, what? She inspects it for a little bit, only to realize it's not cut anymore, so she ends up having to recut it.
Now, is it possible she just didn't slice all the way through the lemon? Yeah, but it didn't appear to be cut at all, at least according to her. Now, it looks to me like she sliced through that sucker. I mean, I see the separation, but then somehow it supposedly forms back together. Interestingly, some commenters mention a yellowish flash appearing around the lemon. One guy said, "Okay, with the brightness all the way up and my face an inch from my screen, I see two clear halves and a yellow-white flash, and it's suddenly whole again." I don't know, guys, we may have an interdimensional glitch lemon on our hands. This is Brady Fel, and this is a guy named Brady Fel. No, I did not just show two pictures of the same guy. Are they twins? Well, not technically. Are they brothers? Nope. Are they related at all? No. They're just two very similar looking men who happen to be named Brady Fel, played minor league baseball around the same time, have an identical height of 6'4", and they each share exactly 53% Germanic ancestry. I mean, you know, just some minor coincidences. You know what I'm gonna say now? The fact that these two exist so closely to each other as well, it just feels like a glitch. I mean, if we really are living in a simulation, then this is a very clear case of someone running things who just got lazy and just copied and pasted these two guys with some very slight tweaks. And before, any know-it-alls in the comments are like, "They don't look like twins," just stop, all right? They do, unequivocally. Identical twins? Maybe not. There are some clear differences in their faces, but they do look like they could be fraternal twins. Just admit it. So it's late at night and a trucker in Mexico is hauling cargo to Monterrey. Nothing weird, it's just another long drive until the company supervisor checks the truck's remote camera and sees something that makes his skin crawl. Sitting in the passenger seat is what looks like a woman. Pale, wearing old-fashioned clothes. Now, at first the supervisor just thinks the driver picked up a hitchhiker or something, which is totally against company policy. So he messages the driver, like, "What's with the passenger?" The driver is confused, and he just kind of thinks his boss is messing with him, so he keeps driving. But when he finally arrives at his destination, the supervisor shows him the dashcam footage. The driver freaks out, swearing up and down that he was alone the whole time. But clearly someone was caught on video sitting there next to him the entire trip. Now, it'd be one thing if it was a woman in modern clothes sitting there chatting with the driver, but this wasn't really the case here. Something just seems off about this woman. A ghost? A weird glitch in the Matrix? Either way, you ask the driver and he'd probably tell you it was the creepiest thing he'd ever experienced on the road. What would you do if you were strolling through the park and came across this? 4 black cats, each one chilling on a separate bench. Not just randomly sprawled out either. I mean, 3 of them are sitting right on the edge of their benches, like they're part of some feline cult meeting, waiting for the 4th member to arrive. As for that last cat, well, it's still in motion, just hasn't figured out its assigned seating yet. This image was posted to Reddit titled Control-C, Control-V, so copy-paste, and yeah, it really does look like someone copy and pasted the same cat over and over. Now, black cats already get a bad rap thanks to superstitions, and seeing 4 of them lined up like some shadowy council of judgment doesn't exactly scream good vibes. I'm not even superstitious myself, but I don't even think I'd risk sitting on one of those benches. All right, let's finish off the list with some sciencey talk. So the universe is expanding faster than it should be, and scientists can't quite figure out why. That weird mystery is called the Hubble tension. Basically, we're getting different answers depending on how we measure the speed of the universe's expansion, and it's throwing everything off. To explain it, some researchers from the University of New Mexico and UC Davis have floated a theory that there could be a mirror world. Yes, a full-blown parallel universe made up of what are called shadow particles. Exact copies of the ones in our universe, but invisible, and only detectable through gravity. They're saying this hidden realm could be messing with how we perceive expansion, and might even be the source of dark matter, which is believed to make up most of the universe, but it isn't actually observable. This mirror world idea isn't totally new, but until recently it wasn't linked to solving the Hubble problem. Now scientists think it might be the missing piece that makes the math work. No one's saying that we've, confirmed the existence of parallel universes just yet, but if this turns out to be true, it could completely flip how we see the cosmos. What you're looking at here is obviously police inspecting a crashed car, but this was no normal car. This is known as the Siri Ghost Car case. On December 11th of 2002, multiple calls came into the police about a car swerving off the road and crashing into a ditch near an exit ramp in Surrey, England. Police show up, expecting to find a fresh crash and maybe help a driver in trouble, but they find something stranger. At first, the officers don't see anything unusual, it's just another crash site, but as they get closer, they spot this old, overgrown vehicle. And they do find the driver, but he's no longer alive, and hadn't been for a long time. And I don't mean hours, I mean months. It was the body of a man named Christopher Brian Chandler. He'd been missing for months. Based on the state of the car and the body, the police quickly determined the crash had happened 5 months earlier, back in July of the same year. Christopher's family confirmed that he had been missing since then. So the question was, what were people actually seeing on that cold December night when they phoned the police? There were no other accidents to be found. Some people believe they were seeing a sort of ghost car, a glimpse into another reality. Could it have been a time slip where the crash from the past somehow overlapped with the present moment? Some people think the reports of a crash were from a parallel universe or timeline, and the car appeared in real time for just a brief moment before disappearing. No one really knows for sure, and we'll probably never get the full answer, but it's a perfect example of how strange the world can be, and that maybe there's more going on than we can ever hope to understand. Now, what you're looking at here is known as a cold spot, deep out in space. Back in 2004, astronomers detected an anomaly in the cosmic microwave background, or CMB, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. This cold spot is noticeably cooler than its surroundings, spanning approximately 1.8 billion light years. At first, scientists attributed this to a vast, empty supervoid, a massive region with fewer galaxies, but studying it further using more precise measurements, there's some doubt about that explanation, suggesting the void might not be as large or as empty as they thought. Well, so what does this mean though? Well, the discrepancy has led some researchers to wonder if the so-called cold spot could be the result of our universe colliding with another universe during the early stages of cosmic inflation. A collision like that could have left an imprint in the CMB, giving us possible evidence for the existence of parallel universes. This is the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA for short. It's a NASA-funded experiment designed to detect high-energy cosmic neutrinos by capturing radio waves emitted when these particles interact with the Antarctic ice sheet. During its flights, Anita spotted several events where particles appeared to be traveling upward through the Earth instead of coming down from up in space. Scientists were very confused because that's not supposed to happen. Particles like neutrinos had never been seen passing through the Earth like that. Well, one hypothesis is that these anomalies could be explained by the existence of a parallel universe where the laws of physics, including the direction of time, are reversed. In this scenario, particles originating from a mirror universe could travel upward through our planet. In 2019, scientists dropped what looked like a blurry orange donut onto the internet and basically broke science Twitter for a week. What people were seeing was the first real photographic evidence of a black hole, snapped by the Event Horizon Telescope. Now, what we're looking at isn't the black hole itself technically, because physics just won't let us actually see the thing. What it is the glowing gas and light bending around the edges of the black hole. That ring is the Event Horizon, a one-way ticket to nowhere, or maybe somewhere else. See, theoretical physicists like Nikodem Pawlowski think that black holes might not just absorb stuff into nothingness, but may instead be gateways to other universes. This theory says when matter collapses into a black hole, it might not get crushed out of existence, but instead get funneled into an entirely new universe on the other side. Like, imagine every black hole being the Big Bang for a different reality.
It's all based on some deep theoretical physics. No one can prove it yet, but it does fit in with the idea about multiverses and bouncing universes instead of just one big beginning. So yeah, maybe this blurry space donut isn't just a hole, maybe it's a door. What you're looking at here is a piece of what's called Curian Photography. Back in the late 1930s, a guy named Simon Curian figured out that if you zap something with a high voltage current and take a picture of it, you get these weird glowing outlines around the object. Plants, apples, people's fingers, suddenly they all looked like they had some kind of electric aura around them. It was like photographing a life energy, or maybe something from some other reality bleeding into ours. Now, people still argue about what this actually shows. Some say it's just moisture or static or whatever. Cool, noted. But we're here to talk about the weird and unexplained. So others think this glow is something deeper, a glimpse into another layer of existence, something we can't see with our eyes, but might be there all the time, kind of like the Force. Some even claim these energy fields shift with your mood or health, and if you believe the more far-out theories, you're literally watching energy from another dimension react in real time. No one's ever managed to fully explain it, but the fact that a basic electrical rig might be snapping pics of alternate layers of reality, that's the kind of stuff that does keep you up at 3 a.m. scrolling deeper and deeper into the weirder parts of the internet. Back in 2007, a security camera at the courthouse in Santa Fe caught something weird early in the morning around 7 a.m. On the footage, there's this glowing white thing, kind of round, kind of shapeless too, just drifting across the frame. It wasn't fast or anything, just sort of floating there. People online immediately started calling it a ghost. Obviously, I mean, what else are people gonna say? Well, some said it looked more like something out of phase with reality, like we were seeing a bleed through from somewhere else entirely. The way it moves doesn't look like a reflection or a glitch. It looks like it's there, just not in the way anything else usually is. Of course, the official explanation was that it was a bug walking across the lens, and sure, it could be that, but what do you think? Does it really look like a bug? People in different parts of the world have filmed what looks like two suns in the sky at the same time. One bright sun and then a second one that looks slightly smaller but still glowing like a legit celestial body. Naturally, a lot of people are pretty confused about this. Some folks say it's just a lens flare. Others say that nope, that was actually in the sky. So scientists have looked into it, like Jim Kaler, an astronomer from the University of Illinois, who says it's probably some kind of atmospheric optical illusion, light bending in weird ways because of moisture or temperature layers in the air, but even he is not 100% sure what the hell's going on. Mirages usually stack vertically, like one image above the other. This double sun thing is side by side, which makes a little less sense, so no one knows exactly what causes it. Grant Perry, another scientist, flat out said this is not a common optical phenomenon. So yeah, maybe it's just a weird trick of the light, or maybe we're seeing something that we can't even begin to comprehend. So this one is pretty wild. There's a CCTV clip that's become pretty well known for how downright bizarre it is. A guy is walking down the street at night. A second man enters the frame in front of him, at which point the first guy does something super weird. The guy in the back taps the dude in the front on the shoulder right as a car whizzes by and a metal object swings out as the guy in front is about to get swatted with it. If it weren't for the tap, he would have been hit, no question. The guy who does the tapping seems completely unfazed though. He's not panicking, he doesn't even look back to check if the car's about to hit him. How did he know what was about to happen? It's also strange because he doesn't even say anything. Doesn't stick around to be like, oh damn, wasn't that nuts? It's almost like he knew exactly what was going to happen and was just doing his part to stop it. And then he's out. Naturally, the internet lost its mind with theories. The most popular one, the guy giving the warning is a time traveler. Maybe he's from the future, maybe a version of the guy in front of him from a different reality, trying to make sure his past self doesn't die in a freak accident. Could this be a huge coincidence? Maybe, but maybe not. So this is some straight up NPC behavior, except in real life. So a guy in Omsk, Russia wakes up one morning and can't find his flock of sheep. Usually he expects to find them right where he left them, but not today. He goes out looking for them and to his surprise finds the entire flock of sheep standing on top of a roof. Now there's no obvious way for these sheep to get up there, no secret sheep elevator that we know of anyway. The man assumed they'd somehow gotten spooked by something and just climbed up the roof. How the hell do a bunch of sheep get up there without making a noise or causing a ruckus? It's like they just teleported to the top, like an NPC glitch in a video game randomly appearing on a roof. Next we have Spaceworks. Orcs standing for odd radio circles. So what are these? Well, they're actually what the name suggests, massive circular blobs in space that show up in radio telescope images. And no one really knows what they are. They were first discovered in 2020 when astronomers were mapping the sky using Australia's ASCAP radio telescope. These huge rings appeared out of nowhere, perfectly circular, massive in size, and didn't match anything scientists had seen before. They aren't galaxies, stars, supernova remnants, or anything that usually pops up in space surveys. Some scientists think they might be the result of huge explosions or collisions far, far away, cosmic shockwaves that left behind radio footprints we're just now seeing. But others think they could have something to do with galaxies which have active black holes at their centers. And then there's the more exciting possibility that orcs might be a sign of something completely new, some sort of phenomenon we just don't have a name for yet. In 1851, a man calling himself Yoparvorin was picked up by local authorities in the town of Frankfurt Oder, in what was then Prussia. He didn't speak German fluently, but he understood it well enough to communicate, and what he told them left everyone confused. He claimed to be from a country called Luxaria, which he said was in a region called Sacria, supposedly somewhere in the Eastern Hemisphere. Never heard of it? Well, yeah, nobody else did either. It wasn't on any map, it wasn't part of any empire, and it never has been. It didn't exist. But Yopar was dead serious. He said he was searching for his long-lost brother, and when asked to show his documents, he produced papers written in a completely unknown language. He also claimed to be fluent in multiple languages, some of which had no record of ever existing either, like Luxarian and Abramian. Eventually, authorities labeled him a lunatic and sent him off for further investigation, and that's the last the world ever heard of him. There was never any follow-up. If this guy ever really did exist, he probably ended up in an asylum, and if you know anything about mental institutions at the time, you know they were basically hell on earth. Makes sense he was never heard from again. Was this guy mentally unstable though, or is there really a chance that he somehow slipped from an alternate reality, a different version of Earth where Luxaria was as real as Germany? And in this alternate Earth, is there a more handsome version of me doing a video just like this, but talking about how Yoparvorin mysteriously vanished into thin air and was never seen again? In the heart of Liverpool, there's a street called Bold Street. Nothing crazy at first glance, just shops, cafes, people going about their day, but ask around and you'll likely hear whispers about something very strange. People slipping through time. One of the most famous stories comes from 1996. A guy named Frank was walking with his wife near Bold Street. She popped into a bookstore and he strolled ahead to a music shop. As he crossed the street, everything suddenly changed. Modern cars vanished, the noises around him dulled, and when he looked around, he was standing in what looked like 1950s Liverpool. People were dressed in post-war clothes, and there were old-school shop fronts where modern businesses should have been. He even saw a store called Crips, which hadn't existed in decades. A few moments later, the world flickered again, and he was back in the present like nothing had happened. Frank swore that this happened though, and he's not the only one. There are dozens of reports from people who say they've walked Bold Street and wound up in the past. Some just for a few seconds, others for minutes. Is it just a coincidence, hallucinations, or is Bold Street sitting on some kind of weird wrinkle in time, a natural glitch in the matrix, if you will? In 1979, two British couples, Geoff and Pauline Simpson and Len and Cynthia Gisby, were driving through France on their way to a holiday in Spain. While passing through Paris, they decided to stop for the night. They pulled off the main road and found this charming, old-fashioned hotel. Nothing fancy, but it was cozy and heavy wooden furniture. No modern conveniences though, like none. The beds didn't have pillows even, it was just bolsters. The windows had these old wooden shutters, odd but charming in a vintage kind of way. They even had dinner at the attached restaurant, where they were served a very basic, kind of old school meal by staff in these outdated uniforms. The whole night also only cost them about 19 francs total. That's about $21.50 US. Even in the 70s, that was suspiciously cheap. They tried to find the hotel again on their way back through Paris, but it was gone completely. They retraced their route. They asked locals. Nobody had ever heard of this place though. The road they remembered taking didn't seem to exist anymore. They later checked their photos from the trip, but the ones they took of the hotel were gone. They just weren't there. But both couples swore up and down that this was real. So did they spend the night in a building that slipped forward through time, or did they slip backward into some echo of a Paris that no longer was there? In 2009, a guy named James Richards claimed he had a very weird experience in California. According to him, he was out driving near Del Porto Canyon with his dog when it took off chasing a rabbit. He ran after it, tripped, hit his head, and blacked out. When he came to, he was in what looked like a regular room with furniture, but there were also machines he didn't recognize. A man introduced himself as Jonas and said that while on a work-related trip from a dimensional travel agency, he had used the machine to transport the unconscious Richards to this parallel Earth in order to help him. This alternate version of Earth was very similar to ours, but with some key differences. One being that in Jonas's world, the Beatles were all still alive and making music. Naturally, James didn't believe it until Jonas gave him a cassette tape. The label said Everyday Chemistry. It was a compilation of Beatles songs that didn't exist here. James brought the tape back with him when he returned to our world, and he posted the whole thing on a website he made. The music's on there. It does kind of sound like the Beatles' version of like Pink Floyd's Division Bell, you know, like just music they would have done in their later years. Is this just a really creative art project or a hoax though? Or is there a chance there's really a whole Beatles album online from a parallel universe? Back in the 12th century, the quiet village of Woolpit in England got a visit from two very strange kids. A brother and sister showed up out of nowhere, looking completely lost. They were also bright green, not a sickly green, I mean kind of like Shrek hue. The locals were kind of freaked out, but they took them in. The kids didn't speak any recognizable language. They were terrified of sunlight, and they refused to eat anything except raw beans for days. Now eventually they adjusted a bit. The boy unfortunately got sick and died not long after, but the girl survived and slowly learned to speak English. And that's when she started telling people some pretty strange things. She said they came from a place called St. Martin's Land, where everything had a greenish twilight and the sun never fully shone. According to her, the two of them had been tending to their father's flock when they heard this loud noise and suddenly found themselves in Woolpit. Were these mysterious green children from some different culture and just got lost, or had they somehow wandered out of a parallel world? In 1957, something terrible happened in the quiet town of Hexham, England. Two sisters, Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock, were hit by a car and killed while walking to church. Their parents, understandably, were devastated, but about a year later, the mother got pregnant again, and in 1958, she gave birth to twins again. Gillian and Jennifer, they named them. Now, from the start, there were some odd things. Jennifer had birthmarks in the exact same place as Jacqueline had them, and as they got older, the twins started asking for toys that had belonged to their dead sisters, toys they'd never seen before. They even knew their names. They also seemed to have memories of places they'd never been, like a school the older girls had attended. One time the twins pointed out a park they claimed to recognize, saying, "That's where we used to play." By the time they turned 5, though, the memories began to fade. The girls grew up like normal kids, eventually forgetting all the strange things they used to say, but their father became convinced that Joanna and Jacqueline had been reincarnated into their twin sisters. Was it a case of parental grief mixing with coincidence, or did something actually transfer over? Like two souls refusing to move on, jumping right back into the same family. A lot of people who've heard this story kinda think so. And that's why the story of the Pollack twins became one of the most famous reincarnation cases ever recorded. In 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson was driving home late at night in Minnesota when his car went into a ditch near the town of Lind. He wasn't hurt, he was just stuck, so he called his parents around 1:30 a.m. and asked them to come get him. He said he was near Lind. When they drove out there, they couldn't find him. He stayed on the phone with them for nearly 47 minutes, calmly describing where he was walking. Then suddenly, in the middle of the call, Brandon said, "Oh, and the line went dead. That was the last time anyone heard from him. His car was eventually found, but they never found a body, and to this day, Brandon Swanson's disappearance remains completely unsolved. In 1901, 2 English school teachers, Anne Moberly and Charlotte Jourdain, took a trip to Paris. While visiting the Palace of Versailles, they decided to explore the gardens near the Petit Trianon, Marie Antoinette's old stomping grounds. But as they wandered, something felt kinda off. The air got heavy, the atmosphere changed. The people they passed were suddenly wearing 18th century clothing. One man in a wide-brim hat looked downright ghostly even. They claimed the place felt lifeless and surreal, like walking into a painting. But then, out of nowhere, everything snapped back to normal. Later, they became convinced that they had time-slipped straight into pre-revolution France, possibly 1792. They even claimed to have seen Marie Antoinette herself sketching by the grass. They wrote a book about it under fake names, and the story became relatively famous. Some believed it, some said they were just delusional or making it up entirely, but both women stuck to their story for the rest of their lives. Were they hallucinating, or did they somehow catch a rip in time and stumble into the past? There's a patch over the South Atlantic Ocean called the South Atlantic Anomaly, and it's kinda like the Bermuda Triangle but for space. So satellites that pass over it glitch out. Laptops on the International Space Station will sometimes crash. Astronauts report seeing flashes of light even when their eyes are closed. Why? Because in this spot, Earth's magnetic field is weirdly weak, like dangerously weak, which allows more cosmic radiation to pour in. NASA even has to shut off instruments when passing over it because they can't guarantee accurate readings. Some satellites have flat out died after taking too many passes, and here's the freakiest part: the anomaly seems to be growing and splitting. And conspiracy theorists, they got plenty of theories. Ancient alien tech buried under the ocean, a secret underground base, a rift to another dimension, possibly.